Hello, everybody. Justice League X Rwby Part 1 came out like a couple months ago, and with the release of Part 2, I'm going to be reviewing them both of them. Today is obviously the video about Part 1, so let's get into that. Rwby X JLA Hero and Huntsman Part 1. That is too long of a title. Was mediocre. And I think the biggest reason is because of the character interactions. And by that I mean it kind of suffered in the sense that while I would argue most people were on character, or in character, there were obviously exceptions. Like, for example, I think Diana, not basically not disrespecting, but not considering Bruce, Superman, Cyborg, Flash, all of these other characters to not be true warriors was very, very weird. Like, oh, they're not like warriors. I grew up on an island with a bunch of other warriors. You grew up on an island where it was safe, secure, and you had no external threats. Batman had his parents get murdered and then went on a globe-trotting adventure to master thousands of different fighting styles to become one of the best martial artists on the planet. Like, I feel like that alone proves him as a warrior, but he's also worked with Diana, because this is obviously the way it's set up in the film. The Justice League has already been established and everything is going relatively smoothly. They have like opponents like Kilgore. I don't know if Darkseid's been introduced, but most likely Lex Luthor. All the classic Justice League villains have appeared. So that means Batman was most likely involved, and so was Superman and Vixen and Black Canary and all these other characters. So to have Diana completely dismiss them just feels out of character and very odd. And they do make the excuse that since they're all in teenage bodies, they're being affected in different ways. So it's hard to necessarily say what is off character or if that was intentional. Now, speaking of out of character, I would say that Batman being or wanting to stay in Remnant, where he has superpowers, is also extremely out of character. But it's not as big of Diana because it's not him actively diminishing the value of other people. It's more just him not having true confidence in himself, which is not an issue that Batman normally has, so it's quite odd. Apart from that, the Rwby characters, apart from Rwby herself, who's a little bit more nervous than what we expect from her in this position, but apart from that, everyone is typically on character for what is genuinely established. But exactly that, since they've been split up, like you have Diana, Yang, and Blake in one group, Batman and Weiss in another, Superman, Cyborg, Vixen, Flash, and Nora and Ren. So they've all been split up. So the character interactions are not as plentiful as you hoped for, and that leads to instances where Batman straight up doesn't have a conversation. He doesn't even say hi to Rwby maybe in like the final act, and that's it. Diana has one line to Weiss, which is basically her saying, "Hi, it's nice to meet you," and then completely dismissing her for the rest of the movie, and rinse and repeat for most of them. Cyborg gets one interaction where he yells at Rwby and insults her, and like, it truly is really odd because most of the character interactions between all of the characters are genuinely negative, which, while creating tension between the two teams, is not necessarily how this crossover feels like it's meant to be. Now, obviously, I say negative. It's not horrible. Like, they're not punching each other or anything. I had no idea or intrusive thought saying that, oh, they're gonna all fight each other, and it was not to that situation. However, the only two characters that I could see being positive reinforcements were John and Jess. Jessica Cruz is relatively new. She's not a very prominent Green Lantern, but her performance was pretty good in this movie. And on top of that, the voice work for all the characters, I would say, is pretty good, with the exception of, I would say, maybe Batman. And yeah, I just wanted to bring up voice work because the same lady who voices Android 18 voices Jessica Cruz in this movie, which is a nice little, But anyway, their dynamic is positive and helps. It allows them to both build up off of each other. John building through the fact that, a lot of people around him die, and Jessica getting over her major insecurities which hinder her helping people, So, those two were probably, honestly, they might have been the best part. Also, the Green Lantern call in the mid portion of the movie was very, very impressive. I really applaud her for the voice work on that, a standout moment of the movie. But, yeah, it wouldn't necessarily write home about the characters. And as far as the animation goes, which helps bring them to life, that actually is very solid. Since this is the first Rwby movie, they definitely stepped up their game from the show, I would say. And, the lighting, shading, fluidity of movements is all very, very nice. They did not skim out on the animation for this movie, and I cannot be happier about it. I have yet to see part 2 of the time of this recording, but from what I have seen of the trailers, it looks to be just as good. Now, on to the main thing, which is mostly negatives. I know I was talking about them generally before, but here are the major ones. The choreography and overall pacing of the movie, along with the story, is not that good. The story was really, really predictable. The minute I saw the Grim glitching, I knew what kind of movie we were in for. But yeah, it does not benefit this movie. And the fact that they kind of make it mysterious when it is very easy to piece it together does not help. And it's not like the clues necessarily help us. It's normally when you watch something where, something that the cast member does not, it fills in because you're like, oh, well, they're picking up clues. They saw very similar clues to us, and it seems like they didn't even try to figure it out. It felt very dumb. However, one bit that I liked was they talked about former villains, and it made them feel very experienced because they didn't really care about winding up in an alternate universe, which, I'll give them credit. It definitely helped out with cementing them as consistent, crime fighters. But with all that being said, I would say the movie on average is about a 6 out of 10. Now, unfortunately, we're going to get into more personal things. I find that really disappointing just because this is the first time Rwby has ever been in a movie format. So, as it's obviously been a show with 9 seasons and even an anime spin-off. But they've never had a movie. They've never broken into that. Yes, Volume 5 was in theaters, but that's not the same thing. I'm talking about a real movie. just like this. And for it to be a 6 out of 10, it just felt rather disappointing. And this isn't me trying to bash the creators, because, a lot of people were like, oh, they're doing it for money and to get experience. And I'm like, yeah, those are fair points. Wanting your company to make money is kind of how companies work. So I do not blame them for making this decision. It's just that with such a lackluster appearance for their first movie, I am quite disappointed. I'm hoping part 2 will be better. I have yet to watch part 2. From what I gather, it looks much more entertaining at the very least, and I'm just quite excited for it. However, with all that being said, part 2 is going to have to do a lot of heavy lifting if they want me as an audience member and as a Rwby fan to be satisfied with the fact these films are made. I do not blame the staff whatsoever for making these films. They have every right to. It's just that as a fan, and as this being the first time Rwby's on screen, I wish it would have done a lot better. But that is personal gripes, which is why I saved it to after I gave the number score. It's still a 6 out of 10. It's not a bad movie, especially as far as the animation goes. I have yet to announce this yet, but I'm probably going to be doing a fight breakdown of the fights in Justice League and Rwby parts 1 and 2 together. The whole Let's Talk About Fights series. I made volume 9 about that part, so I'll be doing it again for these two. Anyway, without further ado, I'll see you all later. Have a great night. Bye, folks.